Welcome to another lovely episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have another previous law enforcement and a paramedic even before that. But before we get started, I want you two things. Take down and take one thing out of this episode. Note it down, run with it, stay focused on it, so you implement it in. 1% growth every single day is 365% over a year. So imagine where you'll be just by implementing 1% every single day. And as usual, this episode is sponsored by Create From Why, my program Rise, which is a 12-week program to take you to no longer being burned out or preventing you from burning out again. So you have that enjoyment, love for the job. And if the job's not it anymore, well, we help you make that clarity as well. So without further ado, Colbie Allen, thanks for being here today. Appreciate
No problem.
you
Thanks for having me.
your time, and thanks for your service as well. 29 years in public service. That's pretty impressive. 19 years law enforcement, 10 years prior to that paramedic. So you've done a lot. I'm sure you've seen a lot. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
about your backstory.
So my backstory is pretty basic. Got married right out of high school, became a dad, and started looking at what I wanted to do, to support my family. And it started out. I loved being a paramedic. It was a good thing for me. It was a good fit. Um, my last 6.5 years as a paramedic, I was actually assigned to a county SWAT team as the combat medic. So in that realm, it got to the point where, at least where I was, that they were trying to decide whether or not they were going to arm the paramedics. So the commander at the time went against the sheriff and said, yes, we are. The only way we could do that legally in the state of Colorado, and keep in mind, this is the 90s, 95, 96, was to send or to go through the police academy. So I volunteered. I went through the police academy, paid for it myself. Uh, my daughter still gives me a hard time because I would work at night, graveyard shift as a paramedic supervisor, um, drive to the academy, sleep for 2 hours in my camper on the back of my pickup truck, go to class for 8 hours, and I did that for 16 weeks. Having the occasional weekend off to go do laundry and stuff like that. Oddly enough, though, when I was in the academy, the police department that I did 19 years with pseudo started recruiting me as to, am I going to stay a paramedic? Did I want to be a full-time cop? Um, to be quite honest with you, the money was better, the retirement was better, it was closer, so it at the time made a lot more sense
Hmm.
to go that route. So I kept my paramedic certificate up for a few more years um, after becoming a police officer with my agency. Started out within a year, I was assigned to um, our agency SWAT team. We were a part-time team, so we had ancillary duties um, on top of being on our SWAT team, um, which is nice in some ways, and in others you fall a little short on training time. Um, there seems to be a lot of turnout or turnaround as far as people coming in and out of the team. So there for the first, I don't know, I'll call it 2 to 3 years, we had a lot of attrition going on in that team because it was a brand new team.
Yeah.
People figured out that, oh shit, this is what we have to do. You actually expect us to run into that? So
Yeah.
they would leave and then we'd bring somebody else in. Um, but yeah, I did that for the majority of my time at the police department. Um, Finally decided to hang up my SWAT spurs when when my body told me it was time to do it. I wasn't a young man anymore. I was, leaving every SWAT training and every mission beat half to death. And,
Yeah.
um, you know, that just, it kind of exacerbated the fact that the stuff that I was going through just as a regular police officer, then you'd have to stuff that as far back as you could because you've got this next big thing coming up.
Yeah.
So, in a nutshell, that's kind of my career. I started out in patrol. I went to our civil and fugitive unit, which I would say that's probably the most fun you can have as a cop, is hunting fugitives and getting paid to do it. I mean,
Sounds
there
like
really is no better job in my book. But I went from that because we do 3 to 5 year rotations in every specialty. It's not like if you go to detectives, you're a detective till you die. We do a 3 year rotation or a 5 year rotation, depending on the level of experience and training you have to go through to stay there.
Yeah.
So I did a little over 3 years in civil and fugitive. Did 6 years in traffic as a motorcycle cop. At the same time, I was on the SWAT team. So my feeble mind said, this is great, this is cool. My wife and my daughter, on the other hand, said, the 2 most dangerous things you can do in law enforcement, you're doing at the same time. So they didn't see it as quite as exciting as I did.
Yeah.
But once I left traffic, that's hard on your body too, and that's when I really started to feel the burnout creeping up on me, because at least in our department, you're not expected, you don't have a quota, but you're expected to write so many tickets a day, or, every auto accident that comes out, you take it, because we were all level 3 accident reconstruction certified.
Yeah.
So even the basic fender bender stuff, they would wait for the traffic guys to get there. And, by the end of the day, you're 10 reports down and you have to be clean by the next day because you're going to start it all over again.
Yeah.
So the burnout really started to hit me then. And then towards the end of that, I finished my time at the police department in patrol. Shortly after rotating out of traffic, I was one of the first 2 officers in on a homicide that involved a 4-year-old boy and his uncle. His uncle took an axe to him. That actually is something I'm going to be here in the near future going back to court on, now that the uncle's out of the mental facility and they've deemed him to be competent to stand trial. But that one was hard because one, it's a 4-year-old. I mean, you get to a point as a cop and as a man, the kid calls are always the hardest regardless. But then you see a kid who had everything laid out in front of him. I mean, he had his whole life, he's getting ready to go to kindergarten. He's, getting ready to start this time, and it's taken away from him, in an instant. And the unfortunate part is we had been to that home, not necessarily for the uncle, but for the grandparents on different mental illness calls or EAP calls. So, that's when my mind started really kind of digging in, why am I doing this if I can't make a difference? And I started telling myself I wasn't making a difference, when basically what it boils down to, looking back on it now, I was doing good things, but it's always the bad things that really stick in your mind. That's the stuff that you have nightmares about. That's the stuff that you catch yourself thinking about when you drive past the same house going to a different call, even years later. But at that time, our department was really starting to look at the effects of what we did on our officers, and offering us the opportunity to seek mental help, to seek that, whether it's psychologist or talking to the chaplain or whatever the case may be. Again, not ever having dealt with this or being told that this could happen, I just went about my job. It just kind of continued from there. And then um, I was exactly a year and a week after, I had a trainee with me. I was his field training officer. And we got another call of a son who had um, attacked his father with a sword, of all things.
As you do.
Um, when we got there, the way it sounded on the radio and from the family members who were trying to get into the house, it sounded like it was an active homicide. I mean, happening right now. Um, so we forced entry. Um, the first thing I see is the dad on the floor. He's obviously deceased. Um, the son, 32-year-old son, I think 31, 32-year-old son. He doesn't have a sword. He's just got a really large kitchen knife. And he's walking away from us. Obviously, he doesn't want to be confronted or you could tell his mind was going. He had lost the cognitive ability to decide what to do now. So he had the knife to his own throat, and you could tell this one the first time because he had cut both sides of his own throat.
Yeah.
We managed to wrestle the knife away from him. Didn't have to shoot him, which I'm thankful for at the
Yeah.
time. I would later fight that decision in my own mind.
Yeah.
Got done with the call, and it was the very next day where the next day was a Saturday. I show up for work. I had tied one on the night before because my mind was just going a million miles an hour. So my sergeant asked me, "Hey, are you fit to even work today? Did you drink too much?" And I just said, "You know what? I'm going home."
Yeah.
And that started the process that I went through as far as being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. Not knowing how to deal with it, because what I was doing obviously wasn't working, talking to the chaplain or trying to talk to family members who didn't understand. It wasn't working. So it was decided by the department at that time that I was told to seek professional help, and they guided me to who our department used as psychologists. So that's where I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. After, it was close to a year. I can't remember the exact amount of time. I had been through EMDR treatments, which really helped. It really helped me process everything that I was stuffing down for all those years. Things came up that, from when I was a kid, from being a paramedic, from law enforcement, just a myriad of things that I was trying to keep buried for so long that they finally just boiled up. My tank was just full. But EMDR really helped me process through all that stuff. And it gave me a lot of tools that allowed me to at least take charge of my own mental health. And, that's something that I was missing because especially as a SWAT guy, you work out all the time, you shoot all the time. You're doing everything except taking care of upstairs, you're not, but you think you are because you're learning tactics, you're learning everything you can about combat medicine, room entries, barricaded subjects, bomb threats. I mean, you think you're educating yourself mentally, but really all you're doing is packing more shit in there. You're not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
After time, I actually got okayed and was tested for our fit for duty test again. So I went through another psychological eval. I went through a week's worth of meetings with the actual head psychologist, was finally allowed to go back to work,
Yeah.
um, which is what I thought at the time I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to quit. No, I mean, if you're a cop, you don't want to quit.
Nah,
You
we're
know,
fighters, man.
but
We fight. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fight to the end.
yeah,
Especially as
and
SWAT, or the specialized squads those higher up specialized squads. You're trained to fight. You're trained to, yeah, look after yourself, protect your team, but you're also very much trained that if you're in the fight, you stay till the fight's done.
yeah, one
Yeah,
way
you
or the
might
other.
retreat back, but you're retreating back to regather, then come back forward. So it's not over till it's over.
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
Mm,
It's a mindset that a lot of people are born with.
yeah,
But it's also ingrained through time.
yeah, and it's a double-edged
That
sword because,
yeah,
yeah, we'll talk about it soon, but yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword for listeners. Listen up for the double-edged sword on why it's a double-edged sword.
so I ended up going back to work for 2 years after all of this, and unfortunately, it was completely different.
Mm,
I didn't feel the same. I didn't look at the job the same.
yeah.
Um, I looked at and felt that the job was it was a paycheck, but more of an annoyance than anything else. Um, it wasn't until my own mom told me that she felt like I had lost my compassion for people, for uh, friends, for teammates. I mean, I was kind of going through the motions, which, looking back on it, that's exactly what I was doing. Um, it finally, after about 2 years, I started to regret my decision to go back into law enforcement.
Yeah.
Um, and as I, you know, was going through that, I'd also been through a divorce. So, now I'm doing all this and I'm on my own for the very first time in my life.
Mm,
I went from living with my parents to being a husband and father. So now I'm alone, just me and my dog. And so fighting those nightmares at night and making those decisions as to what needs to happen were a lot more difficult. Um, but it finally came down to I needed to leave, or it was just going to get worse.
mm,
So I went ahead and retired. I left the department, and in the beginning, I cannot begin to tell you the weight that was lifted off me,
mm.
knowing that I didn't have to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and be in roll call, and you know by noon be pissed off because one more person left their car unlocked and they're upset because somebody stole all their crap. And uh, I didn't have to look at myself like a highly trained, well-equipped report taker. Because eventually that's all you become. And especially in today's climate, with police officers, we're basically not allowed to do what we got into the job in the first place to do. Um, I can remember catching a guy in the Walmart parking lot in a stolen car who had just shoplifted from Walmart, had meth in his pocket, and 2 warrants, and he was released on a PR bond. He was out before I even had the paperwork done.
Yep. Yep. It
And
happens. Yep.
then you come home and you're thinking, why do I even do this?
Yeah. What's the point?
You know.
Why'd I get into
Uh,
this?
so it led me down the dark rabbit hole for a long time, and it took me. And I'm still working at it. I still have the propensity to um, want to go where it's comfortable.
Yeah.
Isolate, to not talk about stuff. With somebody I met a week ago. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I praise you for being here, brother, because it is.
Uh,
This stuff's not easy, and for listeners in that, for the last 15-ish minutes, Kirby's been he's been telling us what's been going on. Colby's been sitting here, telling us what's his whole story. And so I want to praise you for that, man, because it takes a lot, especially if you're still going through anything. It takes a lot to open up about it. You know, law enforcement, first responders, we are trained to protect people. Whether you're an EMT, whether you're a firefighter, whether you're a police officer, whether you're military, we are trained, literally ingrained into us through 16 weeks, 19 weeks, 6 months, however long your training is, to protect people, put ourselves second. But then told to put to keep ourselves safe, and this is how you do that. This is how you keep yourself safe while you run towards gunfire. And so when we then sit back and we start to go, well, actually, I need to keep myself safe by not running towards that gunfire, every alarm bell in our head goes off. We go, no, this isn't what I'm trained to do. This isn't how I've been raised, quote unquote.
You're exactly right.
And so every cell, I call them demons. Every little demon in our head literally tells us and reminds us of all the different reasons why we shouldn't. And so I want to praise you for just what you've talked about for the last little bit, because it's so important. There's so much good stuff in there, and honestly, we don't have time to go through all of it. But everybody would have picked something up out of there, and we all have great stories to tell, and I love, this is why we run the podcast, so that you can tell your story, because I guarantee you already, it helps release some of the control it has over you. I wanted to jump back. So we're going to jump back to kind of the beginning of this, of your career and that. Besides the pay, why'd you jump into law enforcement from the paramedic? Because you said you enjoyed being a paramedic, you enjoyed what you were doing, and then you said the pay was better, so you jumped over. Was there any other reasons that you jumped over to law enforcement in the beginning?
Yeah, because I felt that there's more that I could be doing. That's another thing that, cops have ingrained, as you say. You're always looking for more. Can you do more to help people? Can you do more to make your community safer? Can you be at the call quicker? I mean, all these things that, I'm not going to go into the cliche answer that I used to hate getting from trainees of, I just want to help people. Yeah, that's part of it. With every firefighter, paramedic, cop, military, that's why most of us, that's why we do that job. I mean, that's a given.
Any good human wants to help people.
Exactly. And whether it's a fortunate feeling or an unfortunate feeling, a lot of times once you get into law enforcement, you realize how much your hands are tied versus how much you want to do.
Yeah.
Or, how much more you feel like you can add.
So back then, what was the more? What was the more that you saw you could be doing?
I could be out in the community more. I could be visible. I could be, one of my favorite things was in the summertime when school was out, to just pull up at a park and go shoot basketball with a bunch of little kids, or we have a commons park where there's soccer, there's football, there's a skate park, just being out there and letting people know that you're not only out there to give them a ticket or arrest them or kick them out of their house, or you're not there just to do the bad stuff that they see we have to do. It's an unfortunate part of our job.
Yeah.
But to be part of the community that I grew up in.
Yeah.
I let people know, it's like, hey, I went to this school. Hey, I had that same teacher. That's why I wanted to make that jump.
Yeah.
Is to be part of my community. As a paramedic, it was county based, so I was in a lot of communities. And as a paramedic, you show up when you're called, you do what you can to help people, patch them up, save their life, deliver babies, which is another fun aspect of both jobs.
Yeah.
But then you drop this person off at the hospital, and that's usually the last time you see them.
Yep.
I would make it a point that uh, and I actually took a bunch of crap for it. Um, Repeat offenders on traffic stops. I would actually get to know them. About
Hmm.
the third or fourth time I pulled them over, I'd be like, "Hey, you were going just a little bit slower this time. Good job. Here's your ticket."
Yeah.
But at least then they know he's not an asshole. He's not, some jackboots just riding around on a Harley to look cool.
So you were
He's
doing
fun.
more.
Yeah.
You were consistently doing more. So I want to kind of go into that because you went on. You said, going back to that one, you did SWAT for ages. You started to about the time you came off of the motors or traffic, as you've been saying, and SWAT. You reckon you'd started to burn out at that point?
Yeah.
Were you focused on always looking how you could do more in the way that you could? Like, I know, and as you said, as a cop, your hands are tied. You're tied to the law. You're tied to what is passed down from the top. Whether you like it or not, you are tied. And the thing is with that, and I've realized this after leaving, because I got to that dark place where I hated everybody. I was cynical. I was hard, and didn't like who I had become. All because I focused on the fact of how tied my hands were instead of focusing on how untied my hands were, because I have this uniform and this badge and I'm able to actually make an impact. What was happening? Were you still focusing on how can I do more with what I have when you left traffic and left SWAT?
No, I was not.
Hmm.
I was actually at that point. I was focused on the negative of everything.
Hmm.
I was focused on the fact that my hands were tied. I was focused on um, the fact that I had to, you know, write people tickets instead of giving them warnings. I couldn't be out in the community as much as I wanted to.
Hmm.
Um, I and it just seemed to grow. The negative stuff always grows a lot quicker than the positive stuff, and then you start to lose that positive side.
Hmm.
And every now and then it finds its way out, and you feel good for a day or a week, or you think, okay, this is why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But then that goes away the next shitty thing that happens.
What do you think
And
shifted that? What do you think shifted you from the fact of, oh, I'm doing more, going and playing basketball with the kids and, doing all, having a conversation with repeat offenders and, actually taking that time and giving and doing this in the time that you did have, because we can always find time. So you were doing that, you were finding it, you were focused on it, you were looking for it and looking how to do that. What do you believe caused that shift? I know it might not be as, for some, it's a specific kind of incident or moment. For others, it's an accumulative thing. What do you think? What do you feel for you um, caused that shift and change for you to go from that to everything's bad, my hands are tied, I can't do this, all I'm doing is giving out tickets, my back hurts, I'm in pain all the time, and it's because of this job. What do you think caused that shift?
if I had to put my finger on one thing, it was the when I left the SWAT team, I didn't want to.
Mm,
My mind was still in it. My heart was still in it. It was the ankle reconstructions and the broken elbows and all the stuff that, you know, pretty much just took me out of the game prematurely, I felt.
yeah,
But there's nothing you can do about that. Everybody ages. And, you treat your body like an amusement park ride for so long, pretty soon you're going to feel like it every morning.
yeah.
And, you know, that's, if I had to put a finger on the exact point of when, that's probably when, because I felt smaller in my role. I,
Uh,
I, I felt like I had taken a step backwards, like I wasn't uh, that SWAT guy or that traffic guy or that guy playing basketball with kids in the park, or I wasn't that guy anymore. I was just this pawn used by the community I lived in or worked in to further their goals, is how I look at it.
yeah.
From the city manager on down. Um, so it It did. It made me feel like lesser of a cop, I guess,
Mm.
to go back to just being a cop.
Do you feel
You
like
know,
you lost who you were, like your identity?
it's exactly what happened.
Mm.
It's exactly what happened.
Yeah, and we hear it all the time. You hear it all the time. It's not just when people leave the police. That's a massive one. I struggled with that for a long time until I figured out actually who I am. Uh, but we have it within our roles as well. Especially when you have that tie to something and you're so passionate about it. As you were with SWAT, you can tell you were passionate about SWAT. You were doing it before you were even a cop.
Yeah.
From the medic side. So, uh, what do you believe? Because obviously, life is all about learning. We learn from our past. We only fail if we never learn from it. If we stay in the same pattern. If we don't ever shift, we don't ever grow. If you could rewind, or you could tell your younger self, when you jumped into the police, or when you started into SWAT, or at whatever time it is that you feel is that time, love to know that. But also, what would you tell that younger self to help prevent that loss of identity?
Well, in the last couple of years, the work that I've done on myself,
Mm,
I have found that it really makes a lot of sense that a cop is what I did.
mm,
Who I was who I was when I started.
mm,
You know, um, Even growing up, I you know, I was that proverbial kid that would stop and help an elderly person across the street, or if I'm driving down the highway and somebody's fixing a flat tire, I stop to help. That's inside me. That's something that doesn't just. I mean, you can't teach personality. It's something that God makes you. And I took that piece of it and crumpled it up and just put it on the shelf for a while. And so my identity was Colbie the SWAT guy. It was, not only the SWAT guy, but I was the point guy on the team. I was the first one in all the time. And then when that was gone, I had forgotten that I crumpled myself up and put it on the shelf.
yeah,
So then I was lost.
yeah,
I let myself be lost. And if I could tell my younger self one thing, is just to stay who you are when you start the job. The job is the job. The job's going to be forever changing. The rules are going to be forever changing. You can be as good as something as you want to be, but keep that person that you are when you start the job throughout your job.
yeah. No, it's so important. It's literally what I train people to do. Literally know who they are, because you lose yourself. What would you say for yourself would have been the key, maybe the key three things, one to three things that would have helped you stay who you were and not become Colby the SWAT guy?
Um, Listen to your family.
Mm,
If anybody in your life knows you the best, it's your family. Trust that you were raised a certain way, and I understand some people have uh, hard childhoods, some people have good childhoods like I did. Um, but when my family, my sisters, my parents, my ex-wife, my daughter, when they started telling me that I was a changed person, or that I was changing, I
mm,
didn't listen.
yeah.
But they're the ones that know you the best, because it's like um, it's like an addict. You can tell an addict, hey dude, doing meth is killing you, it's changing you, physically, you're going to die from it. But when you're that meth addict in the middle of it, all you're looking for is the next hit.
Yeah.
You don't see the changes in you, because you're focused on one thing, and that's that next hit. It's no different for a cop,
Yeah.
really. We're just on the other side of it.
Yeah. We're focused
We've
on
got
the
to handle
adrenaline.
these
We're
things.
focused on how do we get that next adrenaline hit a lot of the time,
Exactly.
you know?
That's all it was for me. And sometimes Um, when you're off duty, you're doing something completely stupid and crazy just to get that adrenaline, because you're trying to create that dopamine that you get when the tones go off or when you're doing 120 miles an hour down the highway to catch somebody.
Yeah.
You're trying to get that adrenaline. And as law enforcement goes on, that adrenaline starts to shift and you don't get it anymore. So you got to find it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing. Real quick, I want to interrupt you before you go into maybe another, maybe one other thing, if there is anything else. But that's so important. Like I know as a when I was a cop, I ride motorcycles. We talked about this last week when we kind of met, and I used to do stupid speeds in the back roads. I used to hit corners. You ride, hit that corner a little bit late, brake a little bit later, see if I could lean a little bit harder. And it was a good challenge. But the reason I was doing it was so that I could try and feel something, so that I
Yeah.
could get that adrenaline kick. And the interesting thing is the research that I've done since is cops continuously, unless they learn to turn off, are continuously running on adrenaline, even off duty. And so the perfect examples are sitting in a restaurant or something, and having to have your back to the door and watch the door. That's you
Yeah.
sitting in adrenaline. So what happens is your adrenal glands go crazy. You never recharge them. You never let them actually calm down. And like I still feel the effects of it this day, and I'm 5 years out. Like sometimes adrenaline will kick in, and my body doesn't know what to do with it. And so I get the
Exactly.
the adrenaline shakes. Those shakes the uncontrollable shake. You're like, oh, why can't I stop shaking? And you're breathing and you're doing everything right to calm, but your body is going into these shakes. It's not cold. It's not. It's the adrenaline just spiking because it doesn't know how to control it. And yeah, that really listening to people. I didn't listen to people either. Like my wife, we still talk about it to this day. She's like, you. She's like, I told you a million times what's going on, and asked you what's going on, and said you're changing, and I was like, no, I'm not. I'm fine. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's how it goes, and I really started to notice the adrenaline shakes because like I mean, you get them.
yeah.
They just hit you from wherever.
And
But
they
it
come from
used to be,
nowhere. Like you're like, why am I shaking right now? It's freaking 110 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and I'm freaking shaking. What the like I'm freezing. What is going on here? The
yeah,
first couple times I was like, this is weird. Like I started freaking out. I was like, what the hell's going on with me? I had it happen in the middle of protecting the prime minister one time. I was his son came home, and I had to deal with something, and all of a sudden I had these shakes, and I'm trying to deal with this stuff and deal with dispatch and all these different things on the phone, and I'm sitting there doing this shake thing. I'm like, why the fuck am I shaking? What is going on? It's because I could come from patrol and then I was somewhere where it was calm, and something was happening, and my body didn't know how to respond.
yeah. Because as a police officer, you've got to be able to turn it on like that.
Mm,
You go from the lowest of lows to, driving around or typing a report or joking around and roll call with your buddies to the call comes out and you got to jump.
you're this
You know,
coiled spring. They used to say it when I was on
exactly.
diplomatic protection. It was like I'm a coiled spring, and so you'd be driving around, you'd be like, "Yeah, I'm totally calm." And you look totally calm, but literally your adrenaline's running. You're literally on alert. You're like, "I'm ready. I'm ready. Where's the bad guy gonna come from?"
But eventually that changes too. Because
Yes.
what I noticed over 19 years is when I was a kid and I would go deer hunting.
Yeah.
I archery hunt. So when that deer comes out and you let that arrow fly, you got to hit the adrenaline. You get that dump. You're
Yeah.
shaking. You can't breathe. You can't talk. I mean, you just shake. The last two deer I killed, that never happened
Mm.
because your mind is realizing, okay, well, it's just a deer.
Yeah.
It's not shooting back.
Yeah. You get
There
numb
was
in a
no
way.
adrenaline dump.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, the only time I was shot at was when I was a paramedic. Never got shot at as a cop, but when I was a paramedic, I got shot at. I think 3 times. But if you want an adrenaline dump, deliver a baby
I can only imagine. I can
and
only
try to do
imagine.
it in Spanish.
That's yeah. um yeah, that would be. But we do. We get to this stage where our body actually doesn't know. It's just like anything though, I guess. It's like, when you just first start training in the gym. It's the same exact thing. It feels really hard and then eventually it's like, "Oh, this is kind of easy." Same thing happens with adrenaline, but the problem is that it becomes unhealthy. Your body actually the adrenaline level that's sitting in your body, your adrenals, how much they're working, actually uh the level is it just sits higher, and so you have to do more to feel that emotion and do more to feel that adrenaline and do more to get that heart rate going from a stimulus of excitement. um, and it's unhealthy because it
Yeah.
raises cortisol levels, it causes high blood pressure, it causes all sorts of medical conditions that we don't talk about as law enforcement, and we wonder why so many get cancer, so many die of heart attacks, and then you add on the eating that we do as law enforcement. I could tell you exactly when McDonald's clean their ice cream machine at night.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you have all that, you add all that together, and it just compounds, and then that doesn't help out the fact of your focus. That causes that negative focus, that causes you to lose focus of why you joined this job in the first place. So you could do more, so you could give more, you could be more, you could be in your community more. I wanted to touch base real quick. How do you feel that because I know here they've talked about doing stuff here. I've heard departments, some are like, sweet, once you become a detective you can stay there as long as you want, kind of thing, as long as you're doing a good job. How do you feel that rotation of 3 to 5 years helps counter burnout?
You know, I actually really like it because um, the when we go when and I never was a detective. I didn't want to sit behind a desk. I like being outside. But our detectives would go up for their 3 years, and they would, unless they got really specialized into kids or fraud or something that nobody else wanted to do, um, they would rotate back to patrol after their 3 years. But they would bring all that experience with them
Yeah,
to patrol. Same with traffic. You bring all that experience back to patrol. Same with SWAT. Um, so it's good in the the burnout phase of it because honestly, unless you really love doing something like I loved doing SWAT, there was no burnout because of SWAT.
yeah,
Whereas a lot of our detectives, they just got tired of being 20, 25 cases buried every day, knowing that that's exactly the same shit they got to do tomorrow.
yeah,
And they actually liked coming back to patrol because for the most part in patrol, you finish up your 10-hour shift, your paperwork's done at the end of the 10-hour shift, you start the next day free,
how do you
so that
think
that really helps the burnout.
how do you think, I know you did SWAT for a majority of your career and that, so I take it SWAT, they didn't push that 3 to 5 year rotation.
So it's a 3-year commitment. If you're assigned to SWAT, you have to do it for 3 years.
Yeah,
That's the agreement you make. Because it's such a specialized unit, excuse me, um, you can stay in it as long as you want to.
yeah,
That is one of those things where there's advanced SWAT school, there's executive protection, there's um, evasive or defensive driving for executive protection.
yeah.
Um, you get to specialize in all these things. It wouldn't make sense for them to pull you off that role and have to retrain somebody else just to do it.
So there's a flip, just like anything, there's a flip side of both coins, and I totally agree with everything you said. I guess the kind of final kind of questions that I have, and we kind of have gone over a little bit, but I'm a huge why guy, and I believe your why is tied to your identity, to your true identity, so the true you. Mine is to help myself and others truly see ourselves. And that's my why, is to be seen myself, but also help others see that, and I've shifted the language of that so that it's actually seeing the true self, but it stems from wanting to be seen as a kid. What would you say your why is to your identity?
Um, I would say it's a lot of it's very similar to what you just said. I want one. I want to know me.
Yeah.
I want to know because I'm not the same guy that I was when I started all this.
Yeah.
I am different. Time changes people. So I want to know the real me now.
Mm.
And I also want my family to know the real me.
Yeah.
I want my now my first grandson to know his grandfather that knows himself, not the picture on the wall in SWAT gear, or not the box full of challenge coins and medals and crap that he's going to have to go through when I'm not here anymore. You know, that's one thing that I never was in. I was never into the awards. I was never into the accolades of the job. That's not why I got into it.
Yeah.
Do I have a lot of them? Yes. Anybody who does a career of 19 years in law enforcement, you're going to do some shit right.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't want him to know me for that. I want him to know me for grandpa, the guy who taught him how to shoot a bow, the guy who taught him how to rebuild the brakes on his Jeep, whatever the case may be. Um, and I want before my parents are gone, I want them to know who I am.
Mm.
For the 19 years I was a cop, they knew me as, you're a cop. Why the hell are you a cop? I can't tell you how many times my dad asked me that. Said, you can build things, you build cars, you could be in construction, you do whatever you want. Why the hell do you want to be a cop?
Mm.
And because nobody else in my family was. I didn't come from
And
a
they didn't
lineage.
because you didn't truly know who you were. They didn't know who
Yeah.
you were either. They just knew you as what you did. And it's so true for all first responders out there. This is why this is so important to really know who you are, because how would your life have been different? Should you, did you know that that's who you are? That you're somebody who wants people to know you, but you also want other people to know themselves, because it's a flip side. The coin always has two sides. And so it's a yes for me, but it's also for others as well. How would your career have been different? How would you have policed differently if you had gone into it going, okay, who I am is somebody who wants to know myself and wants others to know myself, but also want to help others know themselves.
Um, First and foremost, it would have been a lot less stressful,
Mm.
you know, um, because you can put yourself in that mindset of, um, like we talked about, this isn't my identity.
Mm.
Wearing the multicam and carrying an M4 is not that's not who I am. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Not just embodying yourself with everything that has to do with law enforcement. Knowing that, hey, I still care for people.
Yeah.
I still, it still breaks my heart when it's Christmas time and I have to evict this family from their house. Yeah, it's my job, but it still sucks. Being able to show that you have empathy and compassion for people,
Yeah.
that could have changed a lot for me, instead of just being this hard ass guy that likes to fight all the time.
All by helping yourself really know yourself and helping others know themselves.
Yeah.
Because then you flip that, and I want to bring awareness to this for listeners and viewers, and even maybe for yourself. The evicting that family out, yes, it's what you have to do, but if you actually take your identity or your purpose or the level that we've gotten to on yours, uh, you then can go, well, this actually, and you can shift it to a positive instead of, crap, I'm evicting these people on Christmas, I'm a horrible person. Instead of saying that and thinking that, you go, well, yes, it's a terrible thing having to evict these people on Christmas. And it's not something that I really want to do, but this is going to help them figure out who they are and figure out what they need to do so this doesn't happen again. What can I say or impact or give with the skills that I have and the knowledge that I know, so that they know who they are, so that they don't do this again. They know the skills that they have. They know what they're capable of. They know, the things that maybe that led up to this, or, you could have that 2 second conversation. All cops are probably sitting there going, it's not my job. I don't have time for that. You got 2 seconds. You got a minute.
Yeah.
And have that conversation, or just literally just giving some impact. I say this to all the recruits that I've trained, all this different stuff. I was like, when you're driving somebody to jail, guess what? You've got that 5, 10, 15 minutes that you're driving them to jail or to court or to book them through. When they're sitting in the back of their car, guess what? They can't not listen to you. You can talk all you fucking want, and you can tell them everything, and you can have conversations with them. They might not say anything. They might yell at you. They might scream at you. But if you, again, have that identity of yourself, you can sit there and go, cool, so why do you keep doing this? What caused all this? Where did this all start from, man?
But you got to take that opportunity. And,
yes, exactly. Exactly.
Most cops don't do that. And I'll be the first one to say I didn't always do that.
I didn't either.
There were times where there's some schmuck in the back of my car. I don't care what his backstory is.
Yeah.
Right now he's pissed me off. He spit on my face, or, he's crapping in my car or whatever. He doesn't deserve to have me question what his backstory is. But then looking back on it now, being on the outside, I kind of wish I knew.
Yeah. Because imagine being in that car in that time with that person, with what we just talked about just now, about the fact of knowing who you were in the beginning and applying that to having that idiot, we'll call him, that person who's gone through whatever he's gone through, that's sitting in the back of your car, taking a shit in it, just spat in your face, done all this stuff, and hates law enforcement and whatever he's saying, coming from the place of, well, I'm not this job. This job is what I do. So how do I bring myself to it?
Well, and that's how society looks at cops.
Yeah.
You are a cop regardless. So
yeah.
If your neighbors know you're a cop, now you're their cop.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate part of that's when you start to buy into that same story,
Yeah,
that,
you
do. And that's where I lost myself.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really honestly know myself in the beginning.
So for the cops and that are listening, the first responders that are listening, that are experiencing that, because I'll guarantee it, there's, hundreds of thousands of cops around the world, maybe millions. Majority of them will be experiencing that. I'm not going to tell my neighbors I'm a cop because I don't want to be seen as the cop. I don't want them to know I'm a cop because I just want to be Chris. I just want to be Colbie.
Yeah.
What would you tell them to make sure, because they're going to find out. You're going to come home in a patrol car. They're going to see your uniform hanging up on the line, or they're going to see you walk out the door in uniform, or they're going to hear something through the grapevine. They're going to find out. It doesn't matter what you do. They're going to find out. Half the time we wear freaking tactical gear as civilians, which blows my mind. You don't want to be found out, but you're wearing 5'11" pants and boots all the time. It's like, and what would you tell them so that they stay who they are through that? Even though somebody says, "Hey, you're that cop," or "You're a cop," or whatever, it's like, yeah, I work as a cop, but that's not who I am. I'm Colbie. I'm Chris.
That's what I would tell them.
Yeah.
It was always easier, especially when, after I was divorced and living on my own, it was always easier to just tell somebody, like tell my new neighbors. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm a cop when I'm at work. When I'm here, I'm still the neighbor who's going to spray a couple of your weeds for you, or, watch your house when you're gone, or I'm still a neighbor. I'm just a dude.
Yeah.
I'm not a cop 24/7.
Yeah.
When we all actually know we are.
But we have the mindset of it, but yeah, it is difficult to disconnect it.
Yeah, and it's just like the criminals. They're good with being criminals until somebody finds out, and then it's all shitty.
Yeah.
So why not just come right out and say, "Hey, I'm a criminal. Cool.
Yeah.
Now I know what to expect."
Yeah.
Same thing with cops.
Yeah. I think there's also a thing in that as well, though, is that yes, we are cops all the time when we run on it, and even now after leaving, it's like, yeah, cool. I used to be a cop, and I still see the traffic stuff and that. But the moment that we start to tell ourselves, like I tell people ask who I am, I'm like, I'm Chris. Or they ask what I do, and I go, well, what I do is I'm a coach. I help people with, I'm a burnout coach. I help people with that. But who I am is Chris. I actually am somebody who sees myself and guides people to see themselves. That's who I am, because that actually is who I am. That is my why. That's my identity. Because when I live from that, then it doesn't matter, like you said, what I do. I could be a coach. I was an insurance advisor. I was a cop. I was a retail person. I was I was a sailor. Those are all the things that I was doing, all so that I could help myself see myself and help others see themselves.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to tell people I was a garbage man.
Yeah,
Never been a garbage man.
yeah. I
Never
used to tell
once.
people I did security. I had done security prior to policing, but I was a security person because people didn't ask about. They didn't care if you were a security person. They were like, meh.
Yeah, you tell people you're a garbage man, and they're like, oh, okay, that's cool. And in your mind, you're thinking, yeah, I take out the garbage every day. It's
Yeah.
just human garbage.
Real quick before we wrap up, I want to just touch base on that because I'm a huge advocate for language. Language is everything, and you start to create what you talk about. And that's where I was kind of talking about with that whole thing of, um, yes, saying I'm a police, is a day job. What I do as a police officer and that, but you got to be real careful on saying what I am, because then you start to actually identify at it as it. When you said that I'm a garbage man, and fuck, the garbage truck just went past just before, and I praised them. I'm like, fuck yeah, thank you, man. Like, good work. Like, I'm glad you're doing it. It's not something I want to do, but I'm glad you're doing it, and I respect them. When you said that I'm a garbage man, did you see that as that's a pretty shitty job and people won't care about it, and that's kind of where I feel I am?
Not necessarily. I looked at it as nobody's going to ask you to tell stories about your job.
Hmm.
If you're the garbage man, yeah, I mean, there's no war stories that I can think of,
Yeah.
other than, maybe some of the interesting stuff you find in people's trash or whatever, but, that was my mindset is, if I told them I did something completely off base from me being a police officer, then they won't ask me about it.
Yeah.
And then they find out I'm a cop. It's like, well, I thought you said you were a garbage man. It's like, yeah, I lied, you know.
How,
So, but
how,
you're
how
right.
did that make you feel though once I found out and you had to say you lied?
Like an idiot,
Yeah.
you know. You get kind of it goes back to when you were a kid. You're better off just telling the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
So
letting
if
people know.
what would be your advice for, the law enforcement and first responders and stuff out there? They're like, yeah, I say the same thing. I'm a garbage man. I'm a security person. They make up some other role or something like that, so they don't have to tell those stories. But obviously, in the end of the day, it makes you. I mean, cops. We're on it. We're there to be honest. We uphold the law, and it starts to drag on our identity and who we are, just by those little tiny lies. Those little tiny lies that end up adding up over time, and we lose again. We lose who we are. What would you say to those officers out there or first responders that do that but know that they really should just say I'm a cop but just don't know how to navigate around that? What would be your advice to kind of be able to navigate that, be honest but yet not have to do the things that you don't want to do by being honest, if that makes sense?
It does make sense, and again, hindsight being 2020,
Yeah.
just having that initial conversation,
Yeah.
just telling people, like, "Yep, I'm a police officer. Honestly, I don't have any real stories that I want to talk to you about, or because everybody wants to hear the cool stories. Have you shot somebody, or all this crap? Um, just tell them, hey, I'm a police officer. It's an interesting job. It's what I do.
Yeah.
It That's it. And for the most part, people are going to respect that. You're
Yeah.
always going to have that one dill hole that's like, oh man, have you ever had to fight like an MMA guy? Is like, and in the back of your mind, you're like, yes, I have, and it hurt like hell. But you don't tell them that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what you're saying is just be honest and straight up with
Just be
people. If
honest.
you don't want to talk about it, don't talk about it. And I totally agree with that. I wish I had done that a lot of the times as well. Like I would say I was a cop, and then they'd ask, and I'd resentfully tell them some stories that I had. Like they'd be like, "Oh, tell me a cool work story. You know, is it true that you have better work stories?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, there's some, but it's just another work story." "Oh, can you tell me one?" And so I'd tell them about something, but I wouldn't ever tell them the real truths of it either. And so I feel from mine, and I'd love to know your thing as we wrap up. These always go over time, but hey, there you go. So if you're still listening, good on you, because you're gonna still keep getting nuggets, as I call them. I remember, I do it and I wouldn't tell everybody, but I actually wish I had. I wish I had told them that, yeah, last night I went to a guy who beat up his missus so bad that her eye socket's broken, and she probably won't be able to see out of her eye, because people just don't understand what's out there, that what people are capable of. And it's not to sit there and tell them, hey, the world is bad, but it's to go, look, this is the stuff that I deal with every single day. And if you want to hear it, I'll tell you. And I'm going to do it again with intent of processing it out, so that I don't put it onto that back shelf and bury it away and try and put it in that safe and ignore it and all that. Because at the end of the day, that's what I don't know if you did, Colby, but I put it all back there, and I built the biggest, most nastiest wall that you just could not get, and I kept throwing shit over the wall and kept hoping that it wouldn't come back or bury over the top.
Well, and unfortunately, it always comes back.
Oh, it always does. Oh,
You can't bury it deep enough to have it not come back, or at least in some way, shape, or form. It's always going to come back. And what I tell the people who ask me now, because I've been asked the question, do you wish you'd have told more stories? Yeah, I do, because that's one more thing that I wouldn't have had to process through in my own mind,
yeah,
or try to bury, or try to keep secret. Then people would know, hey, you know what? I think I know why he's in a bad mood today,
yeah,
because of the shit call yesterday.
yeah,
And I think the more people, or that you allow people to know about you, the more comfortable they're going to be around you, because they know more. They know you're not going to bullshit them on stuff like that. But two, you're going to feel more comfortable, because now they don't have to question you on it.
yeah. You're not questioning yourself on what they're questioning. You're not interpreting stuff back. You're not, because you see a mirror in other people. So if you're being dishonest with people, you're going to start seeing them as dishonest people.
Yeah.
And you see a mirror. And I think, to add on to that, also for first responders, it's so important to make sure that you shift and to stay in that, like you said, you got into that negative space. I know I did as well. To stay in that positive space is shift the story to a positive. Yeah, last night I went to a job. Lady was like domestic. Guy beat the crap out of her. It looks like maybe a cracked orbit or in her eye or something. She's been beat up. You might not be able to see. But we caught the guy, and he's pleaded. He's admitted to it all. We got all the evidence, so at least we've got the guy, and she's gonna. There will be some sort of justice, and hopefully she doesn't go back to him, because that would be epic as well. So it's kind of putting that spin onto it, reality, but that spin onto it of, hey, at least we got something out of it. We did something. We did some good.
Yeah.
You know?
Which that's hard for,
Mm.
cops in general, but especially my age cops, because
Yeah.
I come from in the beginning, where your kid's back talking you take the back talk out of them
Yeah.
any way you can. Now you can't do that.
No. I used to hear stories about cops would take, like, if you went to a juvie call or something like that, you'd rock up, and then the cops would go to the parents. Do you want us to deal with this now? And they go, yes, please. The kid just won't listen to me. They take their belt off and they smack them on the ass a few times. You can't do that these days.
Parents can't even do that anymore.
No, they can't.
So yeah, um, stuff like this is good, and I would encourage people to find that outlet to talk about not just the things that are bothering you, but the more you talk about the more you tell your story,
Yeah.
the more people that know your story, the more people that know you, the better you're going to know yourself, and the less of that shit you have to throw behind the wall.
Yeah.
Because if you're not hiding anything, then you're not stressing about it, you're not stressing about it, you can just go on with life.
Yeah.
Be ignorant like everybody else when it comes to, you know, what's going on around you if you want to be. But we know as cops, we're never going to be that person.
No, no.
So it's easier just to talk about.
Talk about it, get it off your chest. It reduces the power that it controls over you. Now, if you're not in the place where you're like, oh, I don't want to talk to people about it, journal it, write it into a book, burn the book afterwards. You know, if you don't want people to know about it, what it does is it gets it out of your head and it starts to reduce the power that it has over it. It starts to reduce the control it has on you because it's not in you anymore. You're talking about it. You're getting it out on a piece of paper, whatever it is. You're just releasing it so that it's not behind that wall. It's external and it's out. So I love that. Colbie, thanks so much for being here today. The last question I always ask, what would be your top tip, the top one tip to self-happiness?
Well, I don't know. That's a tough question. You know, I would say, you know, do what you love to do, whether that is your job for some people. But, you know, for me, I would say I'd love to be outside. You know, if you know there's something you love to do it as much as you can.
Yeah.
You know, be around your family or, you know, whatever that is, just, you know, find the positive thing that makes you tick and just do it and just keep doing it and make sure that you remember that on the bad days.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that's necessarily a tip or what you were looking for, but for me, that's what works. You
I
know,
think it's a great thing. Self-care. Self-care is not selfish. Self-care is a thing that we all have to have, and us first responders, we have a tendency to stop doing it, or we just do things that are for the job. You know, and we call them self-care, but we really inside know that they're not. So I love that. Get outside, you know, or find that thing that you love. Maybe it's building cars. Maybe it's, you know, going out in the wilderness. Maybe it's going to the racetrack and, you know, driving cars. Maybe it's, you know, just meditating or just, you know, woodworking or whatever it is. Do that, have that thing that you love. And if you, I'll add on to this, if you don't have something or you can't think of something, think back to your childhood. What excited you when you were a kid? Start there. Literally, that's what I did. I started there. What excited me as a kid? The outdoors. Being out with my parents on our houseboat and being in nature. Cool. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
I hopped on a motorcycle in the US and I rode through nature and I stayed off the main roads and I went all back roads and not dirt roads necessarily, some, but I went just back roads. And I just literally took all the back roads through Nevada, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona. Not in that order, but I just did back roads and stayed in nature. And it's amazing. So yes, find that one thing. I love it. Any last words, Colbie, before we wrap up?
Just, you know, thank you for having me on this podcast and giving me the opportunity to share my story. Because not only, you know, do I get the self-help out of it, you know, being able to talk about it myself, but hopefully reaching that person who may or may not have similar feelings or a similar situation to what mine is. You know, just we've got to take care of each other, you know, whether it's as cops or just as people.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I think the true family of being a human lies, is just being able to take care of each other.
Yeah. No, I love that. Great last words, Colbie. So this is Fight the Burnout. As I said in the very beginning, make sure, you know, take one thing away from today. There was a ton of really good nuggets, really good things in this episode. We talked about a whole bunch of things. I gave a bunch. Colbie gave a ton. He told us all of his stuff, and I'm sure there's even more detail. Like I said, there was so much we could do, probably about a dozen different episodes on this and talk about different things, but you'd get overwhelmed as a listener. So take what you will away from this, implement it. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, rate this podcast so that other people can get it out there and we can get that message out there that you don't have to always fight the burnout. You can actually not have burnout anymore in your life. So again, if you want any assistance, want to reach out, my email is team@createfromwhy.com, or you can go to createfromwhy.com and book in a Zoom session with me, and we will talk about where you're at, where you want to get to, and how you can get there yourself. Till next time, we love you all, and thank you for listening.